I'm Sam Botta, and here we are at the Murphy home, and Annie and Jimmy Murphy are going to give you and me an exclusive tour of their beautiful home.
Glad to have you here.
It's a rainy day in Beverly Hills, many hours to
Well, this is a different day, of course, for a few years ago.
very few. It's getting better.
We're out of the parades.
No, it's going to be the big one. It's 2015.
Yes.
Exciting and dancing.
I think in life, when you find the right partner, I think the key to life is sharing too, so you share. Sometimes I call the shots, sometimes she calls them, but at the end of the day, we're together on it, so that's the main. Yeah, this is our den where we're in now, Sam, and this actually is like the old jaunting car when I put on a St. Patrick's Day parade in Beverly Hills in 1985. And I was the chairman of the parade, and this is Annie and myself riding down Rodeo Drive
Wow.
in a horse-drawn carriage. And this is a letter from President Reagan congratulating us on putting on the parade. And this was my committee up here, and you have Michael Wayne, and that's Annie in the middle there, and we all have little leprechauns, Ed McMahon, Mario Machado, Ellen Byrnes, and myself there. And this was on the front of Beverly Hills 213 promoting the parade. And these are various, write-ups that we got about the hometown feeling which we were able to create in Beverly Hills. And we have, that's on the right is some pictures where I modeled some clothes for Neiman Marcus one time, so in case that the restaurant business didn't hold up, so I thought I better try another career. And that's the Irish Proclamation when Ireland in 1916 became a republic, and that is also part of that, on that big frame there.
Can I just, I'm a history man. I just want to take a look at that.
Sure,
It's just,
sure,
It's just
yeah.
amazing.
Wow.
I'll bet you I know people on there inside it, right?
Probably do. Sorry, John.
Oh, no, please. I think it's,
So that's the Irish. You can read that there, Josh, about the Irish
yeah.
Declaration of Independence, thanking the Irishmen, the
Yeah.
Americans at the time.
Yeah.
So this is beautiful, but that's
Oh, this is one
I just want
of
yeah.
because,
Angela Lansbury where I took her out on the dance floor when we
Oh, wow.
honored her for the American Island Fund, and she asked me to help her off the stage. As soon as we hit the dance floor, they played Aunt Mame, and all of a sudden we're dancing on the floor, and she said to me, she said, "How come nobody else is dancing?" I said, "Well, nobody else wants to compete with us." So a lot of the celebrities, we met over the years and became friends with quite a few of them. This one is Sidney Poitier with his wife Joanna.
Wow.
Sidney and I used to play up at Dinah Shores once a week. We had a regular tennis game. Very good friend and a great man. He actually started out in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And I said, "You got lucky. You got out and became an actor." So.
And nowadays, he's one of these men that is quoted in a lot of modern nonfiction business books. And you probably have learned a lot about business or about people and their character by how they play tennis.
Exactly. I mean, I could be a psychologist or whatever, because you know a lot about people the moment they walk in. The first greeting or the first time they talk to you. You learn a lot about them, and if you can ask them to wait at the bar, or you better see them if you don't want trouble, So, but it's a fascinating business, and I've loved the business, and have really had 21 great years just with Jimmy's alone, and prior to that, 14 years at the bistro. So I had a tremendous amount of backers, and I had 40 people that backed me, people like Johnny Carson and Bob Newhart and Don Rickles and Chuck Manette and from Manette Phelps, and I had great friends in both political parties, so that it was tremendous to be able to put that group together, and as a result, we took over 10,000 square feet of a parking lot.
Wow.
And built Jimmy's, built it from scratch. So when it actually opened, people were anticipating this to happen, and we actually had 3,000 people show up on opening Sunday. I was on the board of the American Island Fund, and we honored Gene Kelly one year and presented him with this Waterford crystal. and this was at his house. And he became a very special friend. I actually ended up playing tennis with him and once a week. And it was fascinating to play against him. Usually I played against him because his feet were always moving. You know, he was dancing on the tennis court. But became a very good friend and a very special man, and he achieved so much in his life, you know, that he really represented. He used to go to Ireland once a year and rent a cottage in the west of Ireland and take his kids back there just to give them some of his values and acquaint them with the Irish roots. But
Ireland Fund, where we always did. Jimmy was a chairman of that for a lot of dinners here, and it helped Ireland. You know, the funds went to north and south of Ireland to help the children there, and it was always very successful. So Gene, anyway, was honoured one year, and this was the poster we used, and they absolutely enjoyed it. He was just the star.
He signed
He
it
was
for
the
you there.
star. He said he always called me Annie Rooney.
Yeah.
And to Annie and Jimmy, best wishes, Jean. And that was 1986. That's
Fascinating.
Oh, yeah, no, 1990. Oh no, it's a shamrock. This is a shamrock. He threw a shamrock here, Martha, and it was 1990. So you can.
And every year, those mementos become more meaningful.
well, because a lot of those people are not here anymore. You know, they've left us, and they've hopefully gone on to better things. You know.
They sure
I told him to
have.
make sure that I was going to be in charge of the wine cellar when I got up there. So it was a tremendous feeling, you know, to be able to come to America and create what I was able to create. And I think that the fact that I was Irish was a big help, because when I was coming through customs, the customs man said to me, he said, "You're from Ireland?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, welcome to America." He said, "We're happy to have the Irish here." So, I mean, that alone from somebody that was a total stranger, you know, gave me the feeling that I belonged here, and as a result, I was able to seek my fortune or seek the opportunities that came my way. You know. But I believe also that you happen to things rather than waiting for things to happen. The fact is that even though we met all those people and everything, we were still very grounded. You know, we're still basic people. That's Anne's mother, and her father on the right, and those are my parents in the center there. And down below here are our three kids as babies, and when they were getting a little larger. And then these are three of Anne's sisters. She has four sisters that are actually nuns.
Wow.
And this is three of them here. And also here, these were pictures that were taken actually, it was a celebration of Bastille Day at the bistro. These two pictures were at the bistro, and this is one on our honeymoon up in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, well.
Yeah, so let's see, that was a few years, right?
That's my mother and father again.
Oh.
And that was when This is my mother, Anne McGuinness Power, and this is my father, Richard Power. And they were always madly in love. He was a lot older, maybe 10 years, than my mother, who was just 20, I think, when they met. And
But they had 15 children.
Wow. I was about to ask.
Yeah,
You said you
yeah.
had four sisters that are nuns.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
thought maybe you were number, 6 or 7.
7,
Wow.
And the girls, yeah.
the girls, and 7 boys.
That's amazing.
7 brothers. Most of them are in Ireland, and we one sister came to America before I did, and then I did my nurse's training in London and came to California,
Wow.
direct from London, and it was just beautiful since then. You know, the doctors gave such a great welcome, and I just loved what I was doing. I was the operating room nurse for a year until he arrived, and then he put a ring on my finger probably 3 months later. And then I backed out of the jeweler store. I didn't like the ring. I didn't think it was big enough.
Not your Elizabeth Taylor.
And then he proposed and all of this. So then we got married in September of the year he came.
So, what is your background like, Jimmy, compared to hers?
Well, mine was a small family. I'm only one of 8, so it was
Only one of 8.
a small family. But I was born in County Kilkenny, which is in the south of Ireland, and I had it was a simple cottage that I was brought up in one of 8, and went to just school there. And when I left school at 15 or 14 actually, I had no choice because my parents didn't have any money to send me to college or to high school or whatever, and so I took a job as a trainee in a place called Dooley's Hotel in Waterford, which was 30 miles from where I was born. And I had a bicycle that I rode there, the 30 miles that my father rode with me.
Wow.
And I spent a year there, or a year and a half, as a trainee, and did everything from make beds to serve breakfast, lunch and dinner. And then actually they bottled all their own beers and that, and I used to help out on doing that, whether it was washing the bottles, labeling the bottles, tapping the kegs of beer and bottling it. And it was a great experience in that period of time, but I was making little or no money, and everyone said that I should go to England, that there's better opportunities there, and the boats used to come in from Fishguard in Wales into Waterford. It's a port. So I had the equivalent of maybe $10, and which bought my ticket and left me with $5.
Wow.
But not knowing any better, I took that boat and I took a train and I arrived in London without knowing one person. And it was divine intervention or something, but because that first day I found a job. And as a result, I spent a total of 8 years in England and learned my craft. I ended up doing a 3-year apprenticeship at the Savoy Hotel, which you don't get much better than that. And you know, so, and it's been great. And plus the fact that it's where I met Anne. You know, and that was the night the Nightingale was singing in Berkeley Square, and I know that because I was there. You know, so it's
It's true. It's
yeah.
true.
So I've been looking at these photos of you and all these Hollywood leading men from the past. Most of them are gone, and you haven't changed a bit.
Well, thank you, thank you. See, I was born in a place called Tirnanog, which is Gaelic for land of the young. So that's my secret. Plus a little Tullamore Dew once in a while, right?
So that's the fountain of youth.
It's the water of life.
Yes.
It's the water of life. But no, I play tennis 3 times a week, and I love it. I'm a member out at the Riviera Tennis. When I play good tennis, you have to focus on it and think about it. So even if you only do it for an hour and a half, it's a complete escape from whatever your business is, or getting away from things in life, that whether it's tsunamis or earthquakes or whatever else, you know. So it's been good. But I used to get invited to, Wendell Niles used to have this tennis tournament in Monaco every year, and that's where I got to play with people like Regis Philbin and John Forsythe and the Amitraj brothers. Yeah, and Merv Griffin, you know, and Merv Griffin brought in President Reagan and his wife Nancy when they had been to Ireland, and he invited us to sit with him, and he said, you know, tell President where, you know, I told him where I was from in Ireland and the whole thing, and it was fascinating because he quoted to me, I was born in this little village called Killamery in County Kilkenny, and there's a graveyard there, and it has this cross, and underneath has this tombstone, and written on it was, pause, stranger when you pass me by, as you are now, so once was I. So I am now, so you will be, so prepare for life and follow me. So somebody had come along and read that, and wrote underneath, it says, to follow you, I'm not content until I know which way you went.
That's what he used to me, and I thought it was brilliant.
The reason I told that story, because well, I sat down with Merv Griffin and Eva Gabor and President Nancy Reagan, and he said, I read this fascinating, and he quoted me word for word, and I said, you had to be in my little village.
Oh,
I said, that's where that is on this tombstone. Yeah, Killamery Cross. And a funny story about that, there was a couple, Julie and Herb Hutner, and they were on a trip to Ireland, and they were down in Tipperary, and they had to rent a car, and they got completely lost. So they pulled up this farmhouse, and they knocked on the door, and this woman came out, and she said, you know, you got to go down the road here and make this left and right. And she said, well, where are you from? They said, well, we're from Los Angeles, from Beverly Hills. And they said, do you know Jimmy Murphy? And they couldn't believe it. They actually gave me, there's a little, they brought this back here.
The Murphy's Pub.
No, it's a little Irish, Murphy's Bar.
Oh, that's great.
They brought back, you know, which was Terrific, you know, but they couldn't believe it. They said, we're in the middle of the country out in Ireland and somebody wants to know if they knew me, so it was interesting.
But you never know in the middle of the night who'd knock on your door because they'd lost their way.
Now we are in the Murphy dining room here, and this is a great picture that Martha Moody took of me when I was inaugurated into the Hall of the Sebour, the Order of the Sebours, where I had to slice the top off this magnum of Moet Chandon, and there it is, all the foam floating up to the sky there. And I was really, you can see how focused I was there.
Look, Martha, that was your picture. You did this picture.
And actually this Martha, is the sword. This is the sword that I did it with, and the original bottle there. And that was an order that was started about, I don't know, about 30 years ago, and it was started by the champagne company Moet Chandon, and there's only about 30 members in it, and I think I was the 18th member to be initiated into it. And to do so, you had to, they piled 400 glasses in a pyramid, and you had to stand in front of that and slice that champagne open, and then you climbed up on a ladder and poured it in, and it flowed down like a fountain. You know, the whole champagne flowed down like a fountain. You know, it was a great evening. We did it for actually we did the dinner for the John Wayne Cancer, you know, to raise money for that. This actually, Martha, is an extension of our living room. And what really sold us on this house was we walked in the front door and we saw these hills out here. And we said, my God, that's Ireland. It's like the mountains of Mourne sweeping down to the sea, you know. And as a result, you know, the house wasn't in good shape at all, but we never noticed that, you know. But we never regret buying this and just because of California, Los Angeles weather. I mean, you live a lot of your time outdoors, you know. A lot of it is just outdoor living, and this is really an extension of inside, you know, so it's been great.
It's great that you're right here
privacy,
in the middle of Beverly Hills, yet you can't see any other houses.
And the fact that we're on a dead-end street, that you know, you don't get any through traffic, so that it's peaceful. Once you walk in that front door, you get the crickets at night and you get the birds in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I've got Annie in my morning sun.
No, you're full of beauty and godliness. Look at this. Did you tell Martha?
Oh, I'll tell her about that.
Yeah, Martha, Pascal.
I don't know if you remember that from the restaurant, Martha, but
in the lounge.
Oh, wow.
Pascal, the artist,
This was in the waterfall.
gave me that for the opening of Jimmy's, and she made it specially that we had by the bar and the entryway to Jimmy's, and it's actually a sculpture in steel, and it's a lady washing her hair.
Stainless steel.
And Pascal is a French artist. She's a great artist. She's still with us, and she's in her
She
90s.
is?
Yeah, she's in her 90s. You know.
Jimmy, recently I sat down with Rick Dees. You may have
Yeah, I know Rick.
already.
Yeah.
He said one investment that you never do not invest in a restaurant if you have, you know, if you're a celebrity, don't invest in a restaurant unless you're planning to live at the restaurant.
Okay.
And he said it's a bad investment unless you're going to be there at the restaurant. And that may have come out of a conversation with you because you were at your restaurant.
Well, actually, yeah, Rick Dees was a very good customer and a terrific guy. You know, he's just a super guy. And but it's very true because most people that invest in restaurants, they do it because they want the glamour of the restaurant. The fact that they say, oh, they walk in, they're going to get a table. I'm an owner. But for the most part, the returns are not there. And that was one thing that I took 2 mortgages on this house to make sure that I put my money in as well as theirs, just to prove to them that I was really sincere about doing this. And the best thing that happened, I mean, they got dividends along the way, but after 21 years, they all got a big check, which means if I wanted to do it tomorrow, they would back me again, you know. And I got the best note from Bob Newhart. He wrote me a handwritten note and said, Jimmy, he said, I've made a lot of investments, he said, but this has been one of the best. And he said, we have these dart games, and it's something that happens all the time in Ireland in pubs, you know, that people play darts for drinks and sometimes maybe for money, but it's a great game. It's a fun game.
Great.
But I know we're back here. down at the end here is this room back here is a wine cellar. And when our two boys were young, they played a lot of basketball. And when they left home, we didn't have a need for it. So I decided I had collecting wines, and I decided to build a wine cellar, which is what I did there. So. But I used to play tennis every morning, Saturday morning, at Richard Cohen's house with Louis Jardin and Sidney Poitier and Richard. And he had this beautiful home there in Beverly Hills, and it had this cobblestone entrance. So they came over and they shot the front of this house and this entrance, and then they shot the party here. So when they did this movie, it showed like that was, and people were writing me and called me from Ireland. They said, "God, you got to mention, you know, we got to come over and visit you." But that worked out pretty good. This is Limelight, which is I'm one of the producers. Limelight is something that I started with about 17 years ago. A young man by the name of Chris Curtis, and he played piano for me, and he studied music at UCLA, and started writing all this music for Limelight for Chaplin. It's a story of life story of Charlie Chaplin, from where he started in an orphanage in London, and came to America with the Fred Carno trio, and then came to Hollywood and built his own studios. But we just had a great 6-week run down at La Jolla Playhouse in La Jolla, and now we're going to be off in September. We're going to do a show off Broadway, and in the spring of 2012 we have a tentative theater booked on Broadway to do the show on Broadway. And it's a fascinating story. It's all original music, and it's a great story. Tom Meehan and Chris Curtis wrote the book, and there's about 26 people in the cast, and it's a show that moves, you know, and it gets you back to part of old Hollywood too, the Hedda Hopper days, and Llewellyn Parsons, and Chaplin lived down the street from here too, and he was also a tennis player. But I actually met him when I was a waiter at the Savoy in London. He used to come with his wife, Una O'Neill, and I used to serve him. Never thinking that here, 40 years or 47 years later, that I'd be involved in producing a musical based on his life story. But
now, as you already know, Jimmy Murphy is one of the original Hollywood leading men. And he's known all of the Hollywood leading men. And he looks so good today. And they say, I think in Ireland they say that real men will wear a kilt. Is that partially true?
That is true.
And another great thing about Jimmy is that he also cooks right here in this room about 4 days a week, and often has groups of 8 to 12 people
Right. And I mean, I love it because you know, there's something personal about having guests in your house, you know, because they can come and relax and feel at home, and you know, and I tell them, you know, after they've had dinner, it's downhill all the way, because we live up on this hillside.
It was a great tradition in Ireland. If you didn't have the soda bread on the table, then people were very kind of a little upset, and it was my mother always baked. Being of a large family, you know, the bread had to be there on the table. She was a very good baker. So one year I was very honoured when they asked me from the Los Angeles Times to do a menu for the St. Patrick's Day. So I did the Irish country menu, and of course the bread took precedence from everything else, I think. And I have all of the details here. I started out with the bread and the scones for tea. Then for the main menu was the chops, cutlets, lamb cutlets, and then this nice salad afterwards, and the trifle, the Irish trifle, is something you eat and have for very special occasions in Ireland, weddings and maybe a funeral or two.
Well, the other night we had season spotlight, and a humongous crowd was there. It was so much fun. There was an after event, but as the after event was winding down, a friend of mine, who's Elizabeth Taylor, had passed. And now we're here with Jimmy Murphy, and I understand that Elizabeth Taylor was at the restaurant pretty often.
Yes, Sam, yeah, she was, actually I first met her, I'd only been here maybe a couple of years, and they came to the bistro. I was at the bistro, and they came, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor came, and they asked if I would cater a party for them at a bungalow. They were staying in a bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So I took one of the chefs up there at 5 o'clock, and one of our favorite dishes was squab. It was stuffed with the wild rice, and it had a pink cherry sauce. So we got up there, and they were going to have 10 guests, and it was going to start at 7:30. So we got up there at 5 o'clock, and we had everything set, the table set, and the kitchen. All those bungalows have their own kitchen. And Richard comes down at 7, and he has a martini, and his guests are arriving, and he has another martini, and the guests are still drinking, and now it's 9:30, and there's no Elizabeth. Finally, at 10 o'clock, Elizabeth shows up. She strolls right in as like nothing happened, and said, "Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here," and the whole thing. She had been in the bedroom, I guess, all this time, or getting made up or whatever. So when they sat down at 10 o'clock, I mean, everybody was just wiped out, you know. But the dinner went on. We served dinner. We were there till 1 in the morning, you know, and
Wow.
it was a fascinating. It was the first time that I'd really been that close to them and that. But then they became, when I had Jimmy's, they became very good customers, you know. And I remember one day in particular, and we did a tremendous lunch business. We'd do 250, 300 luncheons because of our proximity to Century City. And we were packed, and we were waiting for a key customer. I had the corner table there. And who walks in the door but Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor? And people were waiting for tables.
Yes.
And I just, on the spot, said, "Mr. Burton, right this way." I had one table, and I see them right, which was a corner table that was the focal point. Well, nobody said a beep, you know, nobody complained, because they didn't know he didn't have a reservation. But I must give him credit. He came up to me afterwards and he said, "I really appreciate it. I really want to thank you for what you did."
Wow.
You know, so he didn't take it for granted. He knew.
You're the best.
I mean, he saw the crowd. He saw that, and I got to know him a little bit later. You know, and we used to go to parties like Kenny and Jim Backus. He was Mr. Magoo. That was before you. But anyway, he used to give a great New Year's Eve party, and Richard Burton and Elizabeth were always invited. And one night I got talking to him at the party, and he says, "You're Irish?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Irish." He said, "Well, I'm Welsh." He said, we have three things in common. He says, "We're good drinkers." He said, "We're surrounded by water, and neither one of us can swim." So I said, "I'll drink to
I'll leave you with the toast. Oh yeah, success is not a journey, it is a destination. That was in reference to this man here.
So I haven't arrived yet.
Oh, you're still going on that journey.
Yeah.
Exactly what he
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
what he was saying. He's not finished yet.
They also say, you know, an Irishman is never drunk as long as he can hold on to a blade of grass and not fall off the cliff.
Well, that thing
It
is
is counterintuitive, and it's not necessarily what we see on the news on a regular basis. But the most successful people here in Beverly Hills, in my experience, give of themselves because they too had to work hard, and they followed a dream, a piece of excitement that was inside of them that carried them through with faith, even when other people did not believe that things would come together the way that they did.
If you're born in America, you have a lot given to you, and as a result, you don't have the same drive. Maybe it doesn't apply to everyone, but I think that if you, from another country where you didn't have it, you know, and you see the opportunities here, I think that you're more likely to succeed.